Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this chilly Sunday morning in downtown Reno from the roof of the old Holiday Hotel, soon to be Palms Resort Casino on Center and Mill Streets. I'm Greg Carson with a special live edition of Our West Farewell to the Mapes. We are gathered here this Sunday to pay our final respects to a landmark in downtown Reno. The 52-year-old Mapes Hotel is set to be imploded in about 20 minutes at 8 o'clock this morning. The Mapes opened in 1947, December 17th to be exact. It closed exactly 35 years later, December 17th, 1982. And now today, 52 years, 1 month, and 13 days after it opened, the illustrious historic building will be imploded. Efforts to save the Mapes failed. The city decided to tear it down to make way for new development on the riverfront. But as you can see, there is a 35-year gap in what many of us know about the Mapes, and in this next hour we are going to hope to change that. In addition to bringing you the implosion live as it happens here at 8 o'clock this morning, we are going to be taking you back to some of the memories that have made the Mapes one of the most famous buildings in Nevada and, to some people, in America.
And a great big welcome again tonight from the Sky Room of the Mapes Hotel, 11 stories up, overlooking beautiful downtown Reno, on another fabulous weekend from Reno. Nice of you to join us in.
When I opened it, all I wanted to do was shut it down. Everything was going wrong.
Charles Mapes never closed the Mapes Hotel. He had been forcibly evicted, furniture and all.
I always kid people and say I'm the guy that helped close the Mapes Hotel down.
You won't find many people in northern Nevada today who haven't heard of the Mapes Hotel, but many know it only as a boarded-up old building that's been giving the city headaches since it was closed in 1982. The Mapes is considered a landmark by some, an eyesore by others. Some want to tear it down. Others want to save it. But there's no disputing the impact the Mapes had on Reno when this truly was the biggest little city in the world.
Let's open up the show tonight, the old Cole Porter favorite. In fact, this is a set of two, starting out with the Cole Porter favorite, The Lady is a Tramp, and then Zing Went the Strings of My Heart.
Reno was far more sophisticated and worldly in the 30s and 40s and 50s than it is today. It's more small town today, but it's much larger.
Explain that.
Well, there weren't very many of us, but the people that were here were extremely sophisticated and exotic.
The Mapes Hotel was the centerpiece of that sophisticated Reno of a half-century ago. It opened on December 17, 1947 on South Virginia Street along the Truckee River. It was the realization of a dream for the owner, Charles Mapes Jr.
Reno was a very sleepy little town in those days, and there wasn't much attraction. In fact, they were famous as being the Great Divide for divorcees. And the divorcees didn't think much of downtown Reno and stayed out in the ranches. So we had an idea that our family would build a hotel.
The idea actually began with Mapes' father before World War II. Charles Mapes Jr. served in the war and then returned to make the idea a reality. His father did not live to see it happen, but his mother, Gladys, was an integral part of the hotel operations.
She was a very good business lady. She loved to have shows in her Sky Room, and of course whenever I did shows I'd always introduce her and make a lot of her because she was a lovely person.
Betty Stoddard Muncie was a young TV commercial spokeswoman when she was hired as Hotel Public Relations Director in 1947. She quickly learned Mother Mapes' influence.
Charles Mapes was very laid back, and his mother was big boss. And on the mezzanine opposite my office, I had a glassed-in office at the time, and opposite my office was a little room that I called the Queen's Counting Room. She counted every dime that came into that hotel herself. There was no accounting department to begin with. There was no Nothing. She did it all. And we could hear her in there because we could hear the money coming down in this little machine. All day long she would count money. And nobody bothered Mother Mapes when she was in it.
Charles Mapes Jr. was only 24 years old when the hotel casino bearing his name opened for business. He couldn't help feeling overwhelmed.
When I opened it, all I wanted to do was shut it down. Everything was going wrong. I had more action out the back door than I had the front door. I thought, my God, what have I done? Why can't I stop it?
Well, fortunately for him, he never found an answer to that question, but there was no stopping success for the Mapes Hotel. It was a hit, and Charles Mapes Jr. became one of Nevada's top casino bosses by the age of 30. Reno's first TV news director remembers the young Mapes.
He was kind of outgoing. I think he was guarded in what he would say. And again, I think, like all of the casino owners at that time, jealously guarded his property. He wanted his property to be in the forefront.
He was a very quiet guy, raised on a ranch, so he was a true cowboy. Loved the outdoors, hunting, fishing, boating, horseback riding.
Former Mapes PR director Harry Spencer remembers having his hands full with the growing number of visitors to Nevada's tallest building. The 12-story Mapes held several impressive distinctions when it opened in 1947. Besides being the state's tallest building at the time, it also was the first high-rise in the nation constructed as a hotel casino entertainment complex, all under one roof. The Mapes was also one of the first air-conditioned buildings in Nevada. It held the first above-ground showroom, the 11th floor Sky Room. It had the first gourmet restaurant in a Nevada hotel, and the first casino lounge with live entertainment.
It was a big deal because it was a real big building for this area then, and it was also, it had a lot of class. You know, before gambling joints were a little bit, they were marginal.
Don Dondero has spent most of his professional life photographing Reno and Northern Nevada. He was called by the Mapes quite often to take pictures of entertainers and events at the hotel.
They had first-line entertainers in rooms that probably didn't make enough money to pay for the entertainers, but it got them in the building where they could gamble.
The view of the Mapes, as you are going to be seeing it from our various camera angles, is only going to exist for a little while longer. Protesters have been picketing in front of the Mapes ever since the city decided to implode it back in September. That's really when the Save the Mapes effort became a concerted effort. The National Trust for Historic Preservation got involved and tried to make the Mapes a national cause, but the movement never gained enough momentum or influence, really, to stop the city from destroying it. Leaders of the National Trust are here in Reno this morning. They declined an invitation to talk with us here, but they did say they are planning a wake for the Mapes right after the implosion. Their reticence is understandable, by the way. The demolition of the Mapes will mark the first time in more than 100 efforts to save historic buildings that the National Trust for Historic Preservation has failed. So the first failure in more than 100 successful attempts to save historic buildings by the National Trust. We did have one sort of last-minute problem crop up last night when an intruder actually got over the boundary fence and into the Mapes. That was him there on the 5th floor waving. Police say they just got by their line somehow. He was apparently quite intoxicated, according to a witness that we talked to. He was arrested and is actually going to be charged with trespassing. If anything else is missing or destroyed, he could face burglary or destruction of property charges, but police will probably let him go at that. All right, we're going to take a short break as we continue our countdown to the Mapes implosion on this Sunday morning. We'll be right back with more of Our West Farewell to the Mapes. As the Mapes Hotel hit its heydays in the middle of the 20th century, a new generation was taking over to lead the nation from World War II to the Cold War.
We were all set to make a brand new world and get rid of the Russians and get rid of the atomic bomb sellers and get on with our lives. And we did it. We did it quite successfully.
Benny Evans was married to department store tycoon Wilbur May when the Mapes was downtown Reno's centerpiece. They and their friends spent many an evening on the 11th floor of the hotel in a place called the Sky Room.
From the Sky Room of the Mapes Hotel in downtown Reno, it's the sophisticated swing of Freddie Nagel.
It was a big room, but there were seats right up to the edge of the stage. I mean, you could lean on the stage and catch the show. Well, no, you couldn't lean on it because they'd run you the hell off, but you were right there next to them and you could talk to the guy that was on or the gal, whoever. It was great.
Skyrim was a way of life. You have no idea now the way they do it. You come in, you have a show, you have 2 drinks thrown at you, and you get no other service. I served you dinner, drinks, and all while they were on. And I made them do a different show for the second show. Because somebody got stuck on the crap table, we wanted to keep the family there and show them something different.
As entertainers like Sammy Davis Jr., Tony Curtis, and Ray Bolger entertained crowds in the Sky Room, Betty Stoddard was on the air downstairs on KATO and KBET, the radio station located on the mezzanine floor of the Mapes.
I had a little studio there right across from the bank, First National Bank, and I had a glassed-in place there, and I would interview people, and of course everything was live in those days. There wasn't tape anywhere, you know, even TV was live in those days. And they would come down from the Sky Room and they would come in and we would interview them.
Another distinction for the Mapes, it was one of the first casinos to offer package deals to lure tourists from the Bay Area.
In those days, prior to the '60 Winter Olympics, Highway 80, Interstate 80 was really Highway 40, a 2-lane road. And it was about a 9-hour trip, if you were lucky, to San Francisco because of the traffic and the trucks. So the big thing at that time was to maximize the summer season, which was pretty good. But the winters were really terrible, and we had to do everything we could to generate business over the hill.
That urgent need to make money when the snow wasn't blocking the mountain passes created a stiff competition among Reno casino owners.
In those days, it was very, very tough. I can remember going to a meeting for a big golf tournament once and having the principals of 4 of the hotels, I think Harold Smith was there, Charles Mapes was there, sitting down in a room, and they really couldn't agree on the time of day. You know, is this guy going to get more than I'm going to get? Why can't I have this event here?
The Mapes Hotel in Reno is set to be imploded in about 10 minutes at 8 o'clock this morning, but some of you might not know that this is not the first time that there's been a demolition at the Mapes Hotel. Ron Smith, a veteran Reno broadcaster of KNPB TV, now joins us with that humorous part of Mapes history. Tell us about it, Ron.
On the corner of First and Center Street, there used to be a movie theater called the Majestic Theater.
And that's sort of the back end of the Mapes now.
The back end of the property where the Mapes is. It's been a parking lot for many years. But about 1975, that was the time they wanted to demolish this very strong building. And the fact is, the strong is the major part of it, because the main structure that held up the proscenium arch was a huge hunk of steel that somehow virtually refused to fall down. The rest of the building was crumbled down. They used the old system, of course, of not using sledgehammers and the big walls and all of that. And this would not come down. They had cables on it. They set charges to it, and it literally was standing there for about a week or so. And finally, it came down. I think we have a piece of tape that we put together for a sheep dip show about 25 years ago.
This is classic. Let's go ahead and roll sheep dip.
Phew.
Arch, and when again was this, Ron?
This is about 1975. That was shot by Doc Kaminsky, and the voice behind it was a fellow named Click Slocum. And this was a piece for about the 1975 Sheep Dip show.
Funny what a sneeze can do, huh?
A sneeze finally took it down. Literally, it took a week of all kinds of efforts to try and take that structure down, and finally it came. It was pretty funny.
Incredible. Well, we are promised a much bigger show here this morning than the old majestic arch from 1975. The Mapes Hotel itself is set to be demolished at 8 o'clock this morning. Ron Smith, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be talking to you later here in the hour. After a short break, we'll be back with more history of the Mapes Hotel. The final few minutes of existence for the Mapes Hotel are passing by on this Sunday morning, the 30th of January, the year 2000. The 52-year-old hotel, at one time Nevada's tallest building, is set to be imploded at 8 o'clock this morning. When the city decided in December to demolish the Mapes, they hired Klaus Construction out of Sacramento to do the job, and then Klaus subcontracted CDI, Controlled Demolition Incorporated, for today's final movement. Now, the building has already been reduced to just a shell of its former self. Crews have knocked down the mezzanine area and gutted the rest of the hotel. About 100 pounds of dynamite have been strategically placed throughout the 12-story building. When engineers push the button at 8 o'clock, they predict it'll take about 15 seconds or so to reduce it to rubble. There will be a big cloud of dust, but the amount predicted to end up in the Truckee River, big environmental concern, will be only as much as a strong rainstorm would produce. Crews will begin cleaning up the streets as soon as the dust settles, and the city is hoping to have the surrounding streets open again by noon. After that, city officials say you'll see a level, fenced-off dirt lot where the Mapes used to be. The city will be hearing ideas about developing the site in March, so it'll likely be probably a year or so before anything is going to be built here. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people have gathered to watch the implosion of the Mapes this morning from the streets of downtown Reno. We are on the roof of the Holiday Hotel, soon to become the Palms Resort Casino, here on Center and Mill Streets. And we have a guest, perhaps one of the most well-known supporters of the Mapes Hotel here in Reno, former PR Director Harry Spencer. Harry, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks very much, Greg.
We've got about 5 minutes before they're scheduled to bring her down. Thoughts right now?
Like going to a lynch party.
You think?
I think so, if it comes down.
You still have hope that it won't?
Well, it's a pretty solid building. We'll see. It's like Harold's Club implosion. Might be exciting.
What about Charles Mapes himself? Let me put you on the spot and just ask you if you have any thoughts about what he might have thought.
Oh, he wouldn't come down to watch this. I doubt that he would even watch it on television.
Really?
Right. It's a too personal thing. He watched every brick go in that building.
What about what they should do next? Let us, again, just assume that it's going to come down at 8 o'clock. What should go there after that? Any thoughts on that?
Well, it'll be determined, of course, by the city council once they pay the owner of the property, George Cardenas, the money they owe, and whether or not they'll decide an open meeting, closed meeting, over a few drinks. It's hard to say.
At one point in my research about the Mapes, Harry, I had heard that there had been a plan by Charles Mapes himself at one point to bring that building down and put up a bigger tower.
No, the plans were to expand into the empty lot, build another tower, rooftop swimming pool, probably take it up to about 800 rooms.
Okay. All right, we have just gotten word that within 5 minutes or so we should be seeing the hotel come down. It looks like the scheduled 8 o'clock time might be a little off by a couple of minutes or so. Harry, a lot of celebrities stayed in that building. Some of your favorites when you think back?
Frank Sinatra, Clark Gable, Marilyn Monroe, John Wayne.
What was John Wayne like? I didn't know he'd stayed there.
Yeah, he came up, and the first Silver Spurs Award was held in the Sky Room. John Wayne and John Ford received them. And then later on, they gave a posthumous award to Ward Bond, who was John Wayne's best friend. They played ball together at sea. He accompanied Ward's widow and received the award, the Silver Spurs again.
Okay.
Wayne was a terrific guy, two-fisted drinker.
Oh, was he?
Oh, very much so.
The coach room, the lounge, the bar of the Mapes Hotel, Harry, has a lot of great stories to come out of it. Do you want to share one or two that are okay for air?
Okay for home audience.
Right.
Many of the things that happened in Reno were planned in the coach room in the cocktail lounge area. Two I remember distinctly were the first Reno air races, Bill Stead, Charles Mapes, the first camel race, John Houston, Billy Pearson, and it was sort of the place where all of the power elite hung out. Even Ron Smith used to hang out in there.
Even Ron. I hear Don Dondero wanted to try to rebuild the coach room in his house and just didn't have enough room. Is that true?
I think he did. He bought most of the old furniture at the auction, and he's pretty well set there. He consumed, I guess VO stock went down 20% when he went on the wagon.
We are keeping our live cameras, as you can see, trained on the Mapes. We've got a helicopter going overhead, so it's a little hard to hear the warning blast that they're going to give. We're going to keep our cameras on that as we continue to share some memories here, and just be ready because at any moment it could begin. We just wanted to give you that warning. Harry, what about the Sky Room? Again, a place where a lot of entertainers were. It's been described to me as a fairly large room, but still pretty intimate.
It was. About 10 more seconds.
And there you have 52 years, 1 month, and 13 days of history gone up in a cloud of dust. The Cal Neva parking garage and the hundreds of people there are getting a taste of that dust. We may well here on the holiday roof before it's all over as well. Harry, what do you think?
Well, it's gone, but
She
not
went
forgotten.
down, that's for sure. That was an impressive display. At first, it didn't seem like the explosives were going to do their job. She hung in there for about 5 seconds.
That was predicted. That was the warning blast.
Okay.
They did it, if you can call it a good job, it was a successful job.
All right, and we're now getting a little taste of the dust. Our camera there on 200 South Virginia, giving you the wide view of the implosion of the Mapes Hotel. Here comes the dust now. We're going to take a short break and get ourselves some dust covers and rejoin you with more memories of the Mapes Hotel, which was just imploded after 52 years in downtown Reno. We'll be right back. "52 years ago, it was Nevada's tallest building when it opened in 1947. A few moments ago, as you just saw, the Mapes Hotel was imploded and now stands as Art Deco rubble behind me here in downtown Reno. Welcome back to Our West, a farewell to the Mapes. I'm Greg Carson. Well, it appears the implosion went as planned with no major problems. We do have some more camera angles from our various cameras around the city this morning that we will be showing you throughout the rest of the hour. We're going to stay with you until 8:30. And now we're going to continue our look back at the Mapes, what made the Mapes a building known around the world. We'll return to a crucial year in the hotel's history now, 1960.
The best part, I think, was New Year's Eve. Mother Mapes had a big party, free party for everybody in town. And it started about 6 o'clock at night, and you would come for free cocktails and free hors d'oeuvres, and then everybody would go in to the showroom and sit down and have dinner, all on the Mapes Hotel. We never had better times in our life, all free.
1960 was the milestone year for the Mapes Hotel. It had been open for 13 years, and the young owner, Charles Mapes Jr., was enjoying success in the very competitive Reno gambling industry. But as the new decade began, the Mapes would find the international spotlight as the Olympics and Hollywood came to town.
All of the world celebrities, personalities, and people who wanted to go to the Olympics but wanted to stay in a comfortable environment booked the Mapes, so we were sold out. During the period, we scheduled floor show entertainment, knowing that the same people were going to be there. We did 3 shows in 2 weeks instead of 1 show in 2 weeks. And we opened with Debbie Reynolds. She cut the tape to the press club, the ribbon, which was ticker tape from a teletype machine. And then we went to Sammy Davis Jr., who packed him in. Then we went to Mickey Rooney, who chased him out.
The International Olympic Press Center for the Winter Olympics at Squaw Valley was headquartered on the 11th floor of the Mapes Hotel. That was in February of 1960. A few months later, hotel PR director Harry Spencer would be awakened in the middle of the night by a phone call.
Walter Ramage was the manager of the Mapes, and he called me almost midnight one night and said, "Come immediately." So I went down, thinking it was something important. So we went across the street, and I asked him if he couldn't get a bellboy to do this. But what he was doing was pirating the business from the Holiday, because originally the Misfits crew and cast were going to go to the Holiday Hotel.
And with that, the Mapes became the home of Hollywood in Reno for almost a year. The cast and crew of the movie The Misfits included Marilyn Monroe, Clark Gable, Eli Wallach, and Montgomery Clift. Director John Huston faced the challenge of working with a distracted actress in Monroe. She often showed up late, if at all, for scenes, and forced an extra 3 months of shooting here. The boredom forced Huston into one of his most famous escapades.
So the crew was pretty bored because there was not much to do when she didn't show up on critical shooting. And that's when the director, Huston, and his little buddy, Billy Pearson, got together one night and got drunk in the coach room and conjured up the first camel race in Virginia City.
So somehow, world-renowned film director John Huston had 2 camels delivered to Virginia City, Nevada, and he won the first ever Virginia City camel race by a hump and a half over his competitor Billy Pierce. That's Huston with the cigarette and Charles Mapes in the cowboy hat. Meanwhile, the fascination of many, including Charles Mapes himself, was with the starlet of the Misfits, Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn was a fascination to me. She was like a little girl. And the terrible thing was that when dessert would come, she'd open her pocketbook and put all these pills in a row. She said, "You have to excuse me, I've got to take these so I can go to sleep." But if she met another woman, she'd talk about how that woman put up her hair. She didn't want to talk about leading men. She didn't want to talk about pictures. And Clark Gable would walk out of the room. Hell, that was work for him, but he'd talk about anything but pictures.
Hollywood and the Olympics left lasting impressions on Reno and northern Nevada in 1960 and gave the Mapes the reputation as the center for all the action. 3 years later, another event would put the Mapes back into the world spotlight. December 8th, 1963. Harrah's Tahoe plays host to the son of entertainment legend Frank Sinatra. 19-year-old Frank Sinatra Jr. was singing with a big band at the time. After the show, he and a friend were in Sinatra's motel room when 2 men broke in, tied up the friend, and took Sinatra hostage. Authorities notified his father in Palm Springs, California. Frank Sinatra Sr. got on a private plane and flew to Reno. The Washoe County District Attorney at the time met him at the airport.
His immediate desire was to go up to Lake Tahoe, so we took off on the road towards Lake Tahoe, but at this point the snow was coming in. It was almost a blizzard.
So Bill Raggio turned around and drove to the Mapes Hotel in downtown Reno, where Charles Mapes himself turned over his private suite to Frank Sinatra. Hotel Public Relations Director Harry Spencer would take him to the roof for some fresh air a few times a day.
And the guy looked like he hadn't slept in a week, and some days he wouldn't shave, and he was pretty distraught, is a good word.
The Mapes became the headquarters for information on the kidnapping as the FBI moved in. The kidnappers made their first contact with Frank Sinatra Sr. at the Mapes 20 hours after his son was abducted. They demanded $240,000 ransom be paid the next day in Los Angeles. He left Reno for LA the night of December 10th, 1963.
The most difficult part of my job was getting Frank out of the hotel without the press seeing him.
Harry Spencer and 2 FBI agents were able to sneak Frank Sinatra Sr. out the back of the Mapes after telling reporters he would be coming out the front. The ransom was paid as instructed, and Frank Sinatra Jr. was released in LA unhurt 53 hours after he was kidnapped at Lake Tahoe. As the 60s came to a close, Charles Mapes Jr. made a crucial decision. He would start up another casino in downtown Reno. It would be the beginning of the end for the hotel casino that bore his name. And that is what is left of the Mapes Hotel this morning. A short time ago at 8 o'clock, about 100 pounds of dynamite brought the building crashing down into that pile of rubble that you see right there. We've had several cameras posted throughout the downtown area this morning to give you a few different angles of the implosion. It was a spectacular one, and here's another look. It did take about 15 seconds or so, as the demolition crews predicted it would, because after the first explosions went off, the building just sort of stood there, and it wasn't until the last round that everything fell out from under it. That's our camera, by the way, on 200 South Virginia. We'd like to thank the folks at Colliers International for letting us on top of the roof there. On top of the roof here at the old Holiday Hotel is Bob Carroll, veteran Reno broadcaster. What did you think?
You know, you think you're ready for something like this, and I thought all morning long, you know, I'm going to be ready for it, and I wasn't ready for it. It was a moment of kind of sadness when I saw the things go down, really, yeah, and you know, you think you're ready for it, and I really wasn't ready for it. And then you think to yourself, wait a minute, this is a piece of history of 50 years ago, and it's gone now.
Yeah.
What's happening?
No way to bring it back.
Thought. Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
We've been looking back all morning, obviously, towards the history aspect. Let's look towards the future a little bit, Bob. Was this a significant day in Reno, downtown Reno history?
Well, I think absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
It was one of the most significant days that I can remember. You know, if I had to think about it, I liken it, and maybe a bad parallel, but to the old Golden Hotel fire, when the Golden Hotel actually burned down. And although that went on and on for hours and hours and hours. This is what, 14 seconds you said or something.
Right.
But those are the two significant things that I can remember about buildings in downtown Reno.
And as far as the future goes, what do you see happening there? Do you have any ideas on what might work?
You know, I think one of the best ideas I heard came from a San Francisco writer. I believe it was a newspaper guy, Harry, that wrote that letter this morning in the Gazette Journal and said, why not rebuild another Mapes Hotel, bigger and better, but on the same kind of theme.
Same style.
I think that's a great idea. You know, forget building a Paris or San Francisco like Las Vegas. Just build another bigger and better Mapes Hotel. That's a pretty decent idea.
Wouldn't that be ironic?
Yeah, it really would be. It really would. And you know what? It might satisfy, bring everybody together in the community that's been very divided about this.
Yes, and it definitely has brought that up. We've got supporters of the Mapes who are gathering now down at Barbara Bennett Park for a wake this morning. One of them, Harry Spencer, wants to get over there, so after a short break, we are going to talk to him once again and get some final thoughts on this morning's implosion of the Mapes Hotel. Bob Carroll, thank you for joining us this morning.
Greg.
We'll be right back with more of Our West. Farewell to the Mapes. A huge pile of rubble is all that's left of the Mapes Hotel. It was imploded at 8 o'clock this morning by about 100 pounds of dynamite. Hearing everything from city officials, it would appear that everything went as planned. They're going to be cleaning up the streets and hopefully have things back to normal by noon. Welcome back to Our West. farewell to the Mapes. I'm Greg Carson from the top of the old Holiday Hotel, soon to be Palms Resort Casino here at Mill and Center Streets downtown. We continue now our look back at the Mapes. When it closed in 1982, it wasn't because of a lack of success. We conclude our special look at the hotel's history with some prophetic irony from Charles Mapes Jr. himself.
Through my inexperience, wherever it came to be 5-sack concrete, I said, make it 6. And it's built like the proverbial you know what. I think that building will stand longer than any other building in downtown.
In 1969, Charles Mapes Jr. decided to expand his hotel casino business to keep up with the competition. Mapes opened the Money Tree Casino downtown, and it didn't take long for the wisdom of that judgment to come into question.
And the Money Tree became a drain on the Mapes' finances because it was not a successful club. And he had put the title to the Mapes up as security for the loan to build the Money Tree. And when they called the note, First Interstate Bank, might have been First National Bank then, took both properties. And subsequently, they ran them totally into the ground.
But Charles Mapes did not give up his dream quietly.
Charles Mapes never closed the Mapes Hotel. He had been forcibly evicted, furniture and all, 18 months prior to it closing. So the real culprit, if you want to call it, that was the bank.
I always kid people and say I'm the guy that helped close the Mapes Hotel down.
From the sky room of the Mapes Hotel in downtown Reno, it's a sophisticated swing of Freddie Nagel.
In its final months of life, the Mapes was closed except for weekends.
In the 80s, after Charles Mapes had lost the hotel and another group came in to take it over, we were doing a big band remote every Saturday night with Freddie Nagel and his orchestra. Freddie was a very popular dance band of the 30s, 40s, and 50s. So we did a Saturday night dance party and we fed it. We did it live on radio and fed it to several stations in what we considered the marketing areas for Reno. But that was the last thing that happened at the Mapes, and then, you know, after 6 months of that, the Mapes closed down, so I always say, hey, I helped close the Mapes down. Good, bad, or indifferent, I don't know.
Once again, good evening and welcome, everybody. I'm your host, Bob Carroll.
And so, the place that had been the site of so many firsts, the scene of so much celebrity and celebration, was now closed, completely, exactly 35 years from the day it opened. Over the next 2 decades, various groups had various ideas about renovating the Mapes, but none ever came to fruition. Then began the battle between those who wanted to save it and those who thought the Mapes should be torn down.
You always hear the argument, why haven't the private sector saved it if it was worth saving in the last 18 years? I think you can also say the reverse is true. Why hasn't the private sector knocked it down over the last 18 years if it was economically feasible? The city will have spent almost $8 million to purchase and level that site. And the best they can hope to sell it for will be between $2 and $2.5 million for a loss of $6.5 million. That just doesn't make good economic sense.
Don Jepson is an associate architect with Washoe County who has worked on 4 different proposals to renovate the Mapes. In 1996, the city of Reno bought the vacant building for $4 million and spent a couple of years working with another developer on renovation plans, only to have that company pull out of the deal, stating it was economically unfeasible. In 1999, the City Council voted to tear down the Mapes, and demolition work began in October of that year. It was decided the Mapes should be imploded on January 30th, 2000. 250 pounds of explosives would be used to make the building cave in upon itself.
Save the Mapes! Save the Mapes! Save the
Mapes supporters protested outside the hotel and in court before finally giving up the legal battle in mid-January.
I guess what irritates me most, if you look at the other buildings being built or remodeled, the Holiday, some of the buildings downtown like the old Woolworths building, the AT&T building, the new Pavilion, which is a metal building downtown, all those have no architectural details or significance. I mean, they're just kind of blah, plain buildings. The Mapes is just really architecturally significant and historically significant.
And that's what happened to history about 20 minutes ago. At 8 o'clock, the Mapes Hotel was imploded. Former hotel public relations director Harry Spencer joins us one more time with a final thought on what happened this morning. Harry?
It's a little bit like 1954. I was a newspaper man, and I had an assignment to cover the first and only double execution at the Nevada State Prison. Watched 2 men die by cyanide pills, and same feeling here, a sick feeling in your stomach to see something like this happen.
Some of the supporters are getting together downriver, or actually upriver.
They're holding a wake at Barbara Bennett Park. Anyone that would like to come down is invited. And Gary Kozel from the National Trust in Washington, D.C. will be running that show. And this is the beginning, I guess, of a much bigger story, because the National Trust is going to include the Mapes in all their literature as the only building that was named by them that has ever been demolished. And in passing, the Mapes may save other buildings. I guess that's a positive.
Okay.
But, shortly before he died, Charles Mapes told me it'll be a cold day in hell when they blow up the Mapes Hotel. And he was half right.
It was chilly up here this morning.
It's cold up here.
All right, Harry Spencer, we'll let you go to the wake down at Barbara Bennett Park. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
for your memories
Greg.
this morning.
Thank you.
All right, we have another angle of what happened this morning to show you. Let's give it to you from the Cal Neva parking garage. Are we able to have that view? Because the cloud of dust that hit there was tremendous. The 8 o'clock implosion from the Cal Neva.
About 10 more seconds.
Wow, look at that mushroom cloud of dust. We're just going to keep right on that as our camera will ultimately be enveloped by it. That was just across the river from where we are in the Cal Neva parking garage, and that's, as you can see, really the whole sort of implosion direction was aimed right at that way, and everything pretty much went according to plan. Veteran Reno broadcaster Ron Smith from KNPB TV is back with us now. Ron, some thoughts on what you saw? Get some of the dust off your shoulders here.
A bit covered by the dust of the Mapes. I have to say, as I agree with Bob Carroll, you think you're prepared for watching it, and it's such an ethereal experience to watch this grand old building crumble into the heap that you're seeing down there right now. Earlier we were talking about Sheep Dip and the recent show. We did a couple of, quote, shaft awards, one on behalf of a newspaper for the city council and the mayor and their handling of it. And then we came right back. That was a People's Choice Award. And then we had a Sheep's Choice Award that turned around and did a tongue-in-cheek on the preservationists and the older building that wasn't obviously making it and so forth. And
provided a lot of fodder for you guys
this
year.
All those funny lines 10 days ago don't seem very funny right now. Quite frankly, I don't feel like I want to say anything bad about the deceased, and I'm really feeling about the sense of something that we have lost. And even though it had problems, it was part of us. It's like your grand old aunt who wasn't always the perfect part of your relationship and your whole family, but she was family. And the Mapes was family, and I'm afraid we did lose a part of our family this morning.
Ron Smith, thank you so much for your eloquent synopsis. That is about going to wrap things up for us here in our live coverage, this special R West, a farewell to the Mapes. The street around the Mapes, streets I should say, are being cleaned up right now, and if you're going to be traveling in this part of downtown Reno, you should know that they expect to have them open again at about noon today. We'd like to thank many people, including our entire crew that helped put things on the air here. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, I'm Greg Carson.